The Constitution does not work for them. Chapter 12, which is primarily on our public finance management, does not work for them because their intention was to loot. Uhuru Kenyatta was a dynasty. His intention was to become an emperor, an imperialist, so that he owns all the means of production, all the workers, and we consume from him. This is the template that the Mzungu set in place over 100 years ago when he came here with a company called the Royal British East African Company. In fact, the Royal India Company in 1897. It changed to Imperial British East African Company in 1902. This company came to extract from us, to exploit from us, and it came to dominate us as it was doing that. In 1920, when we were formally made a colony of the British Empire, in other words, the British government came to rule, that same company became the civil service, became the so-called leadership of this new government. So a company that came to extract, exploit, and dominate us decided they became now our rulers. In fact, the domination was actually their watchmen who they turned into policemen. So the police you're seeing today are just glorified watchmen who believe the only important person that matters is the one inside the offices. You and I who pay their taxes, their salaries, are irrelevant, are bad people to be beaten. This is no different to what the Mzungu put in place. All we did was change the Mzungu to Africans who have been doing the same thing at the helm of leadership. Every single regime, apart from Kibaki, who tried for a short time to change it, every other regime has been about nothing else. The new constitution gave us the breadth to change it. And Ruto decided that it doesn't work for them. So they decided to operate outside of the Constitution of Kenya. And it very simply started with one simple action in March 2014. Duale took a bill to Parliament where it was seconded by the minority leader called John Bundy. And in that bill, they sought to amend the Constitution so that the revenues that are in government, that are received, do not have to enter the consolidated fund as per the Constitution of Kenya. One account in the Constitution of Kenya is supposed to receive all the money except one thing called if you have a fund created by Parliament, like the housing fund, like the petroleum development fund. Those are monies that can enter there. Other than that, the consolidated fund, which is called the exchequer account at the central bank, is the recipient of all revenues, whether it is tax revenues, whether it is grants, whether it is loans. It is the recipient of all, and that is embedded in the Constitution. And in the Constitution, all that was done was copy-paste that into Public Finance Management Act. Duale brought an amendment that added C and D. And C and D, because the Constitution only had A and B, C and D were about loans. That loans do not have to enter the consolidated. Fees, loans, all these things, government to government business does not have to enter the consolidated account. They can be flying everywhere. And with that simple action, they created a balloon which is not accountable, which the Auditor General cannot audit, which the controller of budget, who is empowered to approving any expenditure out of the consolidated fund, has no access to. And this balloon is simply this. We did what you call a primary account of 10 years, from July 2013 all the way to June 2023, 10 years. And in those 10 years, we said, what are the expenses of the government? Removing any debt expenses. So the first expense is development, which was 6 trillion. The next expense, you look at salaries, you look at county expenditure, you look at pensions, you look at operations of government. Those total expenses came to 14.6 trillion. We said, okay, what was the income from our taxes? In those 10 years, 13.3. So the so-called shortfall was only 1.3 trillion. Now, What happened? They borrowed 7.7. That was not needed, was on no budget, was not needed anywhere, had no expense. So they borrowed 6.4 trillion, $50 billion more than was required. And that is called tax in advance. And that money they swallowed, they ate it, they looted it. And they have given it to us to pay back what they have eaten. They cannot solve this problem because right now, as we are talking, 70 shillings of every 100 of the taxes that we contribute go towards paying that debt. And it is killing us. It is killing us. William Ruto today is a charlatan. He knows what they did. He can pretend all he wants that the problems came during his time. He was part of it. He will never address it because he gets exposed. They get exposed for what they are doing. And their unity is not a surprise. We have now become, the people of Kenya, the 90% of Kenyans are now their common enemy. Because if we keep pursuing this direction, they will get exposed, all of them. Anybody that touched that money over the last 10 to 12 years. Now, there's something I'm forgetting to add, that in as much as we had only a deficit of 1.3 trillion, that was the shortfall. We borrowed 7.7, 6.4 above what we needed. In the same 10 years, we paid 7 trillion from our taxes towards that debt. Since 2023 June, the last financial year, we added another 1.6 trillion from our taxes towards that debt. This year, we are going to pay 1.9 trillion towards that debt. And the interesting thing is that debt doesn't come down. Last year, this time, it was 10.5. Today, it is almost 11. It's 10.8, almost 10.9, 11 trillion. And this year, we are paying 1.8, 1.9 trillion. Next year, this time, I can assure you, it will be above 12, 13, depending as we are going on the exchange rate. And I can also tell you that in the next financial year, we're going to pay another 2.1. The year after that, we're paying 2.4 trillion towards this. And it goes on to 2034 to figures that are most frightening. And we never needed it. Remember, we only needed 1 trillion in 10 years. So they have given us our slavery. We are now slaves. And anybody today who believes they are earning anything, anybody who is in corporate, for example, who is employed, your direct taxes are just about 40%, but your indirect taxes add another 30%. Today, you are paying from all that you're earning, 69% of your income towards this monster called debt. That is 70% of the tax revenue. And all they keep doing, because the 30% that is left is not enough. That just goes to the county. They need 50 shillings for salaries. They borrow more. They need another 40 for operations and maintenance. They borrow more. They are not even doing development. 12% of revenue went to development in the last financial year, and the Constitution says it must be 35. We are now in a state of no return. It is called a sinking ship. Ruto knows it. He knows he is steering a sinking ship. And all he is doing is looting as much as he can before it sinks. And he's trying to bring everybody on board so that there's no alternate voices. He wants everybody on board this ship so that he can even hang on to that 2027. Right? And we can reject him. He doesn't care. He'll have taken his loot and gone. Right? Because this is a sinking ship. Now, we must arrest this. We must stop this hemorrhaging. We must stop this delinquency. You can now see when Ruto is getting annoyed, he is looking unhinged because we are stopping his things. He's trying to loot and we are stopping them from Adani to this vaccine issue. What people are not understanding. I had a previous speaker talk about carbon credits. That's exactly what it's about. The so-called methane gas that is produced out from cows and livestock, out of fatting, right? This is about carbon credits. And he's the looter. He's not telling you. It's got nothing to do with any disease. He wants to get the benefit of carbon credit. Somebody has given him a deal. When you see Haiti with our soldiers there, our policemen there, what is it about? It's a deal he did with Meg Ryan, right? Where Haiti is known for two things, voodoo and minerals. The players of minerals, right, are being removed by these insurgents. And they needed to find a way of legitimizing a concern, a nation going there to protect so-called the people of Haiti against these insurgency so that they can continue their mining. He's a beneficiary of mining there with a lot of American people. Fortunately, Russia and China have vetoed it. So there's no legitimacy to a UN operation. It's all about looting because this ship is sinking. What we are going through today are players who are coming together to protect their own interests. And we hope that they all join that ship so we can sink it and sink them before they sink this nation. We cannot wait to 2027. The time is now. Eric, you talked about SGR. SGR is very, very dear to me. And people like to say, Jimmy, you've been doing deals. I've been a businessman. I am an innovator. I create. SGR, I created in 2008. And SGR, the way he created it with this same company called China Road and Bridge was simply a project that was to be done privately. We are trying to remove RVR that had become a total failure for movement of goods and services. We costed a private, take note, project from here, Mombasa, all the way to Malaba at 60 billion shillings. And if anybody wants the facts, we'll show them. Nobody has contradicted me. 60 billion shillings. And we had a return on that investment of 7 to 8 years, an ROI of 7 to 8 years. It was a fantastic project. It suddenly became a project of 380 billion between Mombasa and Nairobi. Became a project of 500 billion between Mombasa and Naivasha. 500 billion shillings. And it became a government project that the taxpayers to fork this money, the taxpayers the one to pay to borrow. So we said, okay, we don't want to be involved anymore. This is now looting. And I walked out. I completely walked out. And let me tell you, in as much as I have thought maybe people are earning particular amounts of commission on the construction or the wagons, we did an analysis thereafter. The EPC, which is the construction, and the wagons from Mombasa to Nairobi, Mombasa to Naivasha, is 500 billion. The finance contracts, the loan contract says this with China Exim Bank. They are going to provide 90% of that money, 450 billion. Kenyans should raise 10% from their taxes. That agreement was signed. So we audited government records. Did we receive the money from China? Yes, we did. We drew down 450 billion shillings. That money was paid to China Road and Bridge by China Exim Bank. Those drawdown receipts, we have them. Different exchange rates, but we have them. Did we pay the 50 billion into Kenya Airways to pay to China Road and Bridge? Yes, we did. We did the sums. It is called self-raising finance grant treasury to Kenya Airways for onward transmission to the contractor China Road and Bridge, right? Our 10% contribution. And we just did the sums. And when we did the sums, to our amazement, to our shock, it wasn't 50 billion. We, from our taxes, from the coffers of Treasury, paid 644 billion shillings instead of 50 billion. So we paid China Road and Bridge an amount of 1.1 trillion for a contracted project of 500 billion. Nobody ever thought anyone would ever look at the bottom line, would ever go through the myriad of documents and just do simple math. So 600 to 700 billion shillings was looted from our coffers. We built that railway with our own money. We didn't need a loan, and then some. And remember, we had a costing of 60 billion. This is called economic genocide. What has been done by the Ruto regime and being continued by this charlatan, unhinged charlatan called Ruto, is a continuation of economic genocide. We cannot continue this, Eric. We cannot continue this, Cyprian. We cannot continue this, Edgar. All of you that are listening to this, we must put an end to this monster that is not only finishing us, it is finishing generations to come. And the way we do it is by not feeding this monster. A government survives by simply three basic things: the people, the money it receives, and the guns it has. That is how, especially a government like the one of Ruto and the one of Uhuru, because the constitution and rule of law, they pushed it aside, because that should be the foundation. Those three things. We do not have guns. We are not going to an armed struggle, and I'll never advocate for it. But we have the power in our pocket to refuse them money, because when we refuse them money, they cannot operate. They cannot abduct us. They cannot shoot us. They cannot oppress us. They grind to a halt. The Gen Z economic revolution that we saw in March, in May and April, in June, were very clearly a change of the center of gravity of Kenyan politics. They cancelled, they delegitimized William Ruto. They have cancelled parliament. It is over for them. We are going through the process of completing that journey. That journey, normally in established democracies, even democracies with our kind of constitution, means that William Ruto, because he could not pass his finance bill, had to reject it, should have called a general election. He chose the other option of reaching out to the opposition. So he brought in Raila Odinga and didn't quite do it very well, because just gave him a few seats. He never changed his template, his economic template, because that's the next thing you do. You try and create a different economic model, because that one has failed, and try and come back and sell it to the people and bring back another finance bill that we say, okay, maybe we give him another year, right? He didn't do that. He didn't. Now, because Raila has been unable to change the legitimate question of his rule, he's now reaching out to his compatriot, Uhuru Kenyatta, to try and get more legitimacy. I want to advise anybody who is in politics and anybody who is in this space and who is listening. Let me tell you, you enter William Ruto's ship with these guys, you will sink with them. You are going to carry nobody but yourself. You get divorced from the people. 90% of Kenyans are not going to board that vehicle. They left it. And they want to know how we stop this man now. And how we stop this man now is very simply by denying him money. I am calling for a tax revolt. We have lamented enough. We have shouted enough. We have cursed enough. We have said Ruto must go enough, or must go, or Kasongo must go. We have said all those things. Now it is a time for action. That time for action is let us deny them the revenue that they are oppressing us with, that they have enslaved us with. And we must begin a tax revolt. In the next few days, hopefully within the next 1 week, we'll be unleashing a way of methods under which we can deny and refuse this government any more taxation. And the Supreme Court, this delinquent, and I call it delinquent Supreme Court, has already given us a legal way out. In 2020, they had a legal opinion on the finance bill and said that the budget is the revenue estimates, our taxation, and the expenditure together, where it is going. That becomes the budget called the Appropriations Act. And that was the challenge of the Finance Bill of 2023, that the revenue part is not in the Appropriations Act. Now, that was an opinion they had in 2020, that the Court of Appeal quoted in rejecting the Finance Bill of 2023. Then they come and they suddenly say, oh, revenue does not have to be part of the Appropriations Bill. So, if revenue does not have to be, that means tax is not part of the budget. So what are we paying to? They've already given us a legal way out. Your paying tax today is actually not legal, because you have to pay tax to a budget. They have said but you are not part of the budget. So we don't need to pay tax. Now it is the method. And the more we join, the more I can assure you, right, this guy collapses. He has had a scolding this week from IMF. He's had a scolding from World Bank that has told him, you're heading towards debt default. What are you doing to stop this? And all he's saying is that he's still going to come back to us with more taxation, like he has removed the taxation on fertilizer. That's what Bandi has done. They are removing the VAT also on pesticides, right? So that it's now added. So he's saying they are coming back to us with taxation. We must stop this monster, right? And not feed it. We stop it by saying categorically, we are not going to feed it. So when you go to a shop, tell him you don't want to pay VAT because it's cheaper for you and he can go off book. You pay him cash. Do not pay M-Pesa. You can now file a return and do not give the money. You can also refuse to file return if you're earning salaries. If you are a business, you can refuse. If we do it in the millions, what can they do? Kerry can't attack all of us. We are prepared to be the guinea pigs. Come for me if you want and charge me for causing a revolt of tax revolt. Yes, come, like yesterday. I will defend myself in court because we have already gotten out. So they can't do anything if we starve them of money. We must starve them of this money because we are just feeding a monster. We are feeding monsters that come and call us stupid and mad. He even points to his head and calls us mad, right? Who is this man? He's unhinged. Why are we feeding him anymore? Why are we feeding them to buy SUVs while we have potholes on the ground here? Why are we feeding them? And every day we just have misery. Why are we feeding them? And we have no health services. 69% of anybody who is earning an income is going towards debt. In France, Nelson is here. France is one of the most taxed nations. 60% of anyone's income goes towards tax. But what do they get? They get infrastructure, they get security, they get free education, they get excellent health care. You go in for a heart surgery or cancer and you get the best in the world. They get unemployment insurance when you don't have a job. They get pension. In fact, the big fight in France is when is retirement age, because everybody wants that pension because you live very well until you leave this good earth. You can live and live by the beach in Mallorca and other places. That's what they want. So here, with 69%, what are we getting? We get a president who stands up and calls us stupid, calls us mad, all right? Calls us upepo sijui. I don't know what upepo. I don't know who gave him those words. Upepo sijui what kutoka wapi. This is a man now who cannot survive. His pillars have all broken. He came in with a narrative called Hustler Dynasty. Today, he has abandoned that line of the hustlers. He's now operating with the dynasties that he used to talk about. He came in with a church. The church have now called him. All the churches, including Muslims, have now called him a complete liar. He came in with a so-called articulate mouth. That mouth has been taken away. He came in with a lady called Meg Whitman. She has gone too. This man is only operating, and I can tell you today, because Uhuru has not gone there with anybody. He's gone there by himself with his family. He's operating only one leg called Raila Odinga. And that is not going to last. We, the people, must stop feeding this monster. Tax revolt is the way. It has worked in many jurisdictions. It has worked in France. That was the advent of the French Revolution. It worked with stopping apartheid. Even here in Kenya, Wakulima Market, there was a tax revolt that made sure that what they wanted was achieved. We had the hut tax a long time ago that led to the poll tax that we rejected, and eventually was the advent of Mau Mau. We have had success all over the world. I had a friend of mine from South Africa who called and said yesterday that, you know, this tax revolt worked for us as ANC against apartheid. The biggest problem we had was that when we took power, we had great difficulty getting people back to pay tax because they had gotten used to not paying it, right? But we eventually succeeded. It worked with Bagbo and Ouattara. That was one of the things that crumbled Ouattara. that crumbled backbone, right? We can do it here. And we must do it now, because we starve this monster, he collapses. We starve this monster, he takes us to default. And when he starts taking us to default, we'll ask, what are we defaulting on? That is not us who owe that money. It is not ours. You criminals who took it, you're the ones to pay it. We are not going to be your slaves. We are not your slaves. We are not going to be your slaves now and into the future. And we use that opportunity to not only cut off the debt, which is our slavery, but create a system that is deeper than what was embedded by the colonialists over 100 years ago. This is our economic liberation period, and it is our promise to change a system so that if Jimmy is on top tomorrow, I cannot do what Uhuru did. If Eric, you're the one on top tomorrow, you cannot do what they did. You cannot do what Moi did. We create a system that is about the empowerment of the people, that is about people, not leaders, that it is a life of service, and create a new aura and a period for generations to come that make Kenya great for the next 100 years plus. These are periods that happens, and that's why we must have hope. These are periods that change France. These are periods that change China after they had identified their cultural revolution. The economic revolution changed China. These are periods that have changed everywhere that you are talking about a great nation. This is our time, and we cannot wait another 985 days for this man to continue pretending he's our president. He is not. He's just a mere taxpayer, a charlatan, and a crook. Asante sana.
Thank you very much. Hey, Whoa. Yeah, we are in shit. Whoa. Njiru, someone has asked you to comment on what Jimmy has said. And
Eric.
Eric, are you there?
Today
yes.
is not.
There is some.
Today is
Eric,
not.
Just hold on,
second.
Njiru.
All right.
Just hold on, Kenya. Hold on.
Sawa.
Yes, Njiru.
Today is not just a normal space that we are used to. Today is real stuff. And I'm happy for the submissions that have been made by various contributors. May I just take this opportunity to first of all say that the content that is coming from the submissions by various participants on this platform is amazing, and it's an indication that we are actually determined to be a people, and that we are determined to make sure that we do not live in this country like we are being forced to live. I have had various submissions. I listened keenly to what Francis said. I've keenly listened to what Senior Jimmy Wanjigi, His Excellency, has said. And to me, I'm coming to one conclusion. And this has always been my conviction, that this country is sick, and that we understand the ailment where that this country is suffering from. All those issues that His Excellency Jimmy Wanjigi has raised, and those that were raised by Francis, they all revolve around one thing. They revolve around the issue of a state that has failed to honor the rule of law. It revolves around the issues where the state has failed to internalize our constitution and to implement our constitution. I love the way Jimmy began by giving us the preamble to the constitution, so that the preamble can tell us where Kenyans wanted to go in 2010 when they enacted this constitution and gave themselves this document. The aspirations were clear, the roadmap was clear, the wishes of the Kenyans were clear. But somehow, somewhere, we lost the way. And that is the way that we must now retrace. Because retracing this way will help resolve most of the issues and the challenges we are having. For example, going back to the question of the full implementation of our constitution will deal with most of the issues. Article 10 of our constitution, we must keep on reminding Kenyans, gives the principles that we all agreed will govern this country. And one of those principles is the principle of the rule of law. And therefore the question is, what is this rule of law and what is it able to do if we were to follow that path? In my simple understanding, what the rule of law was to do if we were to follow it is that to bring into effect the question of accountability, that leaders would be accountable to the citizens, that leaders would spend the country's resources in a prudent manner, that leaders would be accountable even in their actions to the people of this republic. The other question is, what would then the rule of law also do? It would enhance transparency in the manner in which we conduct our affairs. Why was there concealment? Why are we paying for the SGR? Why did we have to pay for SGR as submitted by Senior Wanjegi? Why would we then be saying that Adani was just about to take our airport when Kenyans themselves are in assured and concealed deals? Is because somebody somewhere has decided that the principle of transparency is not important to us. That the principle of transparency is just supposed to gather dust in our shelves. And that is what the rule of law is speaking to. Then the other question is that, what does the rule of law therefore also speak to? It also speaks to the question of good governance. Remember, the question of good governance is one of the doctrine enshrined in our constitution and Article 10. So Kenyans knew that without good governance, all these issues would arise. Without good governance, there would be corruption. Without good governance, there would be spillage of our resources. Without good governance, there would be no transparency and accountability. And again, the rule of law also speaks to the question of the involvement of the people. And that is why these days the question of public participation is a pertinent issue to all of us. And therefore the question is, if the rule of law was to prevail, if we were to go back to our constitution, if we were to retrace our path, would there have been a situation whereby someone is even contemplating to sell KICC? Would we be having a situation whereby someone is forcing down our throat a vaccination of our cattle for which we do not understand the disease they are seeking to address? All this is failure of the governance system. And we anticipated and aspired that the 2010 Constitution would resolve this. And therefore, further to that, if there was good governance, these issues of Sha, She, Shif would be a thing of the past. Because the question of a good leader would be, how good will this program or project be useful in uplifting the plight of the people that I represent? So my appeal is that as and when we replace ourselves and we go back to our constitution and we get a regime that is going to implement our constitution to the letter, all these challenges will be addressed. Why are we having or living in a country where one of the constitutional commission is dysfunctional? It's because somebody somewhere has decided that the question of good governance is a thing of the past, that he does not want to be accountable to the people. That is why he looks very vacillated, and whenever he's challenged, he goes berserk, insults everybody, left, right, and center, simply because somebody does not want to be called to account. So, in my submissions, we need a government that will be strict in the implementation of the rule of law. I keep on indicating that the ailment in this country was diagnosed in 2010 and a prescription given thereto or proposed. And the prescription is this of the constitution that I'm speaking to. All what we need is a good, diligent political surgeon or political physician who is going to administer this prescription to the Republic of Kenya. The prescription of the new constitution will uplift the people's suffering. It will put to an end this spillage of our national resources. It will put to an end the arrogance in which we are experiencing from Zakayo. So, comrades, it's my humble submissions that as we forge ahead and think of how to resolve the conundrum that the country that is
Yes.
facing the country today, we have a cure. We have a
Yes.
prescription, and the prescription is that of our constitution. And therefore, every
Okay.
person who comes must be subjected to this test of the constitution on how good he understands it and how ready he is to implement the same. The tragedy is we
But advocate, I want to ask you a question.
yes, but allow, allow,
We
allow,
already have okay, okay.
the tragedy we have in this country is that we elected an idiot who has never read this constitution. This idiot swore to defend a document he has never read, a document he has never interacted with. And that is why the country is taking this direction. So the question of the rule of law, and those countries that have succeeded, most of those democracies that have succeeded, they have succeeded because they have premised their governance and the manner of executing their functions. There is no country that can succeed, in my view, if the country deviates from the cardinal points of the rule of law. That is why, as I land, I say that the country must be put back to rail. And getting back to rail, in my view, is the implementation of the Constitution. Eric, I land.
All right. I have two questions. You're talking about implementation of the constitution. Yet we have politicians in parliament who have deliberately violated it in the manner of refusing to constitute an electoral commission, which is a commission that is anchored in the constitution. Therefore, this one puts us in a quagmire in this point. The Electoral and Boundaries Commission is supposed to check our boundaries. Number two, the Electoral Boundaries Commission is supposed to promote continuous registration of voters. Every day, someone in Kenya is turning 18. So what is the way out of this? Because this is already a quagmire. It appears
at all a resignation? Was it a voluntary resignation? So that then we have a plan B to make sure that we either have the panel working and giving us the commissioners, or we have the High Court declaring that there can never have been a resignation if the resignation was as a means of coercion or duress. Because you all remember that the Serena 4 tendered their resignation as a result of Zakayo's coercion. And the reason why the IBC Act or the Constitution, chapter 15, also our belief and our hope that the courts will dispense with substantive justice. But you all witnessed what we saw, that the High Court was conveniently constituted to operationalize a scheme and a conspiracy to make sure that the orders were lifted and that Kendeke was sworn in a lightning speed. So then, comrades, how do we get ourselves out of this situation where our institutions have completely withered? They have been caused to wither deliberately by Zakayo so that he can weaken our democracy. Because the institution that we have created in this country, be it the judiciary, be it the constitutional commissions, they are meant to complement our democracy. They are meant to supplement our democracy. But the weakening of these institutions will culminate into the weakening of our democracy. For the other example I would give, we have the National Police Commission in this country. We have the Police Oversight Authority in this country. All these institutions are supposed to complement each other in making sure that we have a police force that is accountable to the people. So that when we say that we are having people who are being abducted and people who are being extrajudicially killed, there will be somebody to answer us and tell us, we have done our investigations and we believe so and so is culpable for this offense. But because of the compromise and the withering down of our institutions, which goes to the issues I earlier submitted on the question of accountability, transparency, the rule of law, and good governance, is why we are facing this challenge. And that is why I'm insisting, if we were to go back to the path of rule of law, you will not have extrajudicial killings, because any person who is offended by any Kenyan will resort into going to seek remedy to the relevant institution, and that's the judiciary. So the withering down of our institutions culminates into the withering down of our democracy. And that is why you'll see, for example, another example as I pen off, the office of the registrar of political party, an office that Kenyans created to make sure it supplements and helps our political party to grow. But what are we seeing? We are seeing a situation whereby ODM goes into government with Kenya Kwanza. What does that culminate into? It culminates into the weakening of the minority part of, on the minority side of parliament, because a big chunk of the minority, as contemplated by the constitution, has gone in bed with the government. What therefore does that mean? It means that parliament will be compromised when it comes the question of oversighting the executive. So the way forward is that we must protect our institutions and restore our institutions, so that these institutions therefore are able to help us strengthen our democracy. When parliament is in this state, it means therefore there can never be the representation of the people. That is why the people's voice will not matter when it comes the question of alienating the airport in favor of an individual. And therefore the question is, when the institution that we have created fails, are we hopeless? Are we left without a remedy? I join issues with the earlier submissions of a comrade who submitted that in the event the institutions created fails, then we have to resort to the streets. Why? Because Article 37 has institutionalized the street. It tells me, Ndegwa, that if I'm discontented with the parliament, if I am dissatisfied with the executive, if I'm discontented with the judiciary or any other organ, I can go and vent out myself on the streets. I can go and picket. But the end result of picketing is that they have criminalized the only institutions of the street that was remaining. So, comrades, the way forward and one of the resolutions that we must do is to reclaim the street, is to reclaim the institution of the street. Under Article 37, under Article 1, power belonging to the people, and exercising that power directly. So the only place we can directly exercise that power is when we realize that the street is a constitutionalized avenue of giving checks and balances, oversighting, and making sure that we press our issues to be known by the regime. The streets can supersede the regime. The streets can overpower the regime. And the streets can replace the regime. I land.
Children, kwa nini unaua watoto wetu, Ruto? This is a massacre for our children. You have decided to kill our children. You will also die one day. Our prayer, we were not voting for you to come and finish us. Umetumaliza na njia zote, Ruto. Umetumaliza kibiashara. Umetumaliza na kila kitu. Watoto wetu hawasomi. Tunakuja hapa hospitali. NHF umetumalizia. Hatujui unataka kutupeleka wapi, Ruto. But one thing I would tell you, I will address you as Ruto. Wachana na watoto wetu. Demonstration na watoto wetu, it was peaceful. Awache watoto wetu wa demonstrate na wasikize. Finance bill hakuna kitu inamaanisha kwa hii nchi. Sio hiyo kubwa kuliko sisi, ama sio kubwa kuliko wazazi ama watoto. Kwa hivyo aseme no, we are saying no to that financial bill. Hatuitaki, ajue hivyo watu wote hawaitaki, na si ukabila, na si ukabila, sio Mkikuyu ama Mjaluo ama Mluya ama Mkamba ama Mtaita. Ni sisi wote tumesema no to the finance bill. ajue hivyo. Thank you very much. Anapiga watoto wetu risasi kama wanyama vile tumeona na Kenyatta National Hospital today. It's, I don't know what to say. It's just for our kids.
Yani, these politicians have forgotten. Very sad. People wako na machungu, watu wamenyamaza tu, we are just quiet. We are just listening. As they insult us, they call us stupid, social media useless. Nelson. That.
Thank you, Amerix. Am I audible?
Yeah.
That clip is sad. So many people have spoken. I will not speak as much. I will just be very brief. I only have 5 points to make, and they're all related to everything that everybody has said, Gaido and all the rest. And everything they've said is very, very important. And one thing, my point number one actually is that we defeated Adani. When I began on July 11th, that night when I posted, I didn't know it would be that big. And it is, I did not even expect that, this deal was going to be cancelled in the first place. Actually, when we were speaking with so many people, they were like, do you think this deal is going to be cancelled? Unadhani Ruto atakancel hii deal kweli? I miss Yoni. So there was so much pessimism. But in the end, it was cancelled. So what this shows us is that it's possible for Ruto to go home. It looks impossible, but it's possible. Point number two, the finance bill. People are saying, oh, why are you protesting? Hata cancel your deal. Si mnajua tu Ruto ni kichwa ngumu. Oh, ni kichwa ngumu kushinda Uhuru. Atapitisha na kifua. What happened? It was cancelled. And even when we were protesting in Paris, I remember we got police permits to go and protest near the embassy. The embassy refused for us to protest there. And the police gave us another venue. And people were like, oh, nyi mnafanya tu, like whatever you're doing will not amount to nothing. But it was something. That was the second one. The finance bill was cancelled. My third point is that we have never seen such an educated youth in the history of Kenya. Right now, I think most young people are very well educated, and most of them are jobless. Every day in my inbox, I think I get like over 20 DMs of people saying, oh, I've done this course, I don't have a job, I've done this course, or people are still doing the courses in the university and they're unable to pay their school fees. So the workforce is super educated. And that's why when the people in Qatar, I saw a video, I think yesterday, of some Nigerian lady asking, why are Kenyans being favored, to go to Qatar, to Saudi Arabia, to the UAE? They're the ones, the Arabs want Kenyans to go because they're well educated and they're going to pay them very poorly. So it's a skilled workforce, but very cheap workforce. So what this means is that sisi tuko na the factors of production zote. Sahi tukiamua, if we have a good leader who will lead us in the right direction, we have a skilled workforce. The workforce it's in the millions. There are so many people who are willing to work and raise ourselves from poverty. China did it in 30 years. Singapore did it in 30 years as well. Saudi Arabia did it in 20 years. Saudi Arabia was almost like Kenya in 2000. And today it's first world country. China, same. China lifted 300 million people from poverty in 30 years. 300 million people. We are only 50 million people. So we can even do it within a shorter time than China. But what is happening is that, well, we have all these loans that are being embezzled. We have so much corruption. The leaders don't even care. They just say these things, oh, we want to be like Singapore, but they don't really mean it. they don't mean it at all. Hao wanataka tu kuiba, nini yao ikifika wajiondoe. The way they wanted to do Adani deal, the deal was so shoddy, it was terrible, but they didn't care. Adani was coming to steal the airport and do every other thing, and then for them, maybe they get the bribes. They're so stupid because they will get bribes, and at the end of the day, Adani is the one who will run the airport, and maybe the profits will not be that much, and Adani will go and take another asset of Kenya and say, oh, this one is not making enough money, but we already signed a contract, you need to pay me this much, so I will take another asset to compensate for the money that JKIA is not generating. And that's what happened during the colonial times. The French, this is the strategy they used to colonize countries in West Africa, in North Africa, in Central Africa. Morocco, I was being given an example of Morocco, Algeria. They even took their finance ministries because of the concessional agreements that could not materialize. And if you cannot pay whatever amount you agreed on, then you have to concede another asset. And that's where Adani was taking Kenya. And these stupid people, they don't care about Kenya. They don't care about the next 10 years. They don't care about the next 20 years, 30, 40, 50 years. They're only looking at their stomach right now and the money they will make and take to the tax haven, to Abu Dhabi, to Cayman Islands, to Singapore, to those tax havens. Hong Kong is a tax haven. They don't care about us at all. But us, the youth, we are the most educated. During the finance bill, the middle class, the people who are working, educated youth, they were on the streets. It wasn't people from Kibera or people from Mathare, or they were there, yes, but the majority of the people were the educated, segment. And this means that Kenya is ready. Today, if we have a good leadership, the young people are ready to give alternatives. Sisi hatukatai tu ati, oh, we don't want this deal for the airport, we don't want this deal CG for what? As we have the alternatives. If today we are given the opportunity to give an alternative for the airport upgrade, we will give it for build, operate, and transfer. If we are asked to give an alternative for the energy grid, for example, right now, Kenya is, in the next 10 years, if the grid is not, the transmission grid is not upgraded, Nairobi will be like South Africa. Kutakuwa na hizo zinaitwaje, they're called power rationing. So I've forgotten that word. So we will be like South Africa in the next 10 years if the power transmission is not upgraded. But we have the solutions. It's not like we are saying, oh, we don't want this, and then we don't know what to do next. No, nobody has come to us and asked, okay, what is your solution? But we have them. We have educated engineers. We have people who give opinions online, who can go and write these proposals, sit in these meetings and meet investors, for example, very innovative people. But we don't have the opportunity. As Americ said, it's people without brains that are being given the opportunity to be in parliament, to be senators, to be in these positions of power, but they're not using them correctly. They're using them only to fill their pockets. My last point. Yeah. So my second last point is that over these few months that I have been involved in the exposés of Adani, I have met so many people, and I have been fortunate enough to meet some international players who have helped countries to repatriate money that has been stolen from the global south. And I am so hopeful that if we take the leadership of Kenya, we are going to repatriate the money that these people have stolen and have hidden in these tax havens, in the Cayman Islands, in Abu Dhabi, in wherever, all these countries. I have seen people, and I have seen for myself that it's possible to repatriate this money. It's not like a far-fetched idea. We just need to get the right people in power, the people who can follow up these things, and we get the billions and trillions of money that have been hidden and that can help us to pay, to offset this odious debt, because that money was basically the debt. And this means that we will not have to pay tax to offset these debts. And my last point is what Jimmy Wanjigi said. So in France, in 2023, there was a pension reforms, and they were going to add the retirement age from 62 to 63, I think. 1 million people came out to protest. It was so bad, the roads were closed. The people came with garbage and dumped garbage on the roads. It was a huge tax revolt, pension, and it was stopped. So what Jimmy is saying is actually true. The finance bill was a tax revolt. And we have seen the protest at the reason why the Adani deals were cancelled. The indictment in the USA was just a scapegoat. So if we today decide that we want Mr. Ruto to go home, we have only one option. And that option is to go to the streets, to do a revolt, and to stop paying tax, as Jimmy has said in his submissions. So thank you so much, Amerix. Viva, we will overcome.
All right. There's that thing of just giving us a heads up on your case in France and the one in Kenya.
Yes. So today, I'm sorry. Give me 1 second. I'm buying food. Okay. So my case in Kenya. Today was the pre-trial of the case, but it seems like Jayesh Saini and his legal counsel are trying to make it slow down because they didn't submit things they were supposed to submit. So the judge asked them to submit, and then we meet in January. So this is a sign that they think they will lose the case. The case in France is coming up in 6 days on the 17th of December, and it is going to be the final judgment. So 17th of December, we will know if the case will be in the favor of Jayesh or in my favor. In any way, if it's in Jayesh's favor, we have to appeal to go to a higher court, but I highly doubt it will be in his favor. So this is the update for the cases. And I want to give us, a special shout out to Willis, because he has been the one doing everything, all the work for the Kenyan cases for free. I haven't paid a dime. And as I said, it was Jimmy who referred me to Willis for free. So I haven't paid any money. Also, it's good to make this clear right now that I have never received any money from Jimmy Wanjigi. I am not campaigning for him. People are accusing me of this, but the truth is the things Jimmy Wanjigi says are very pertinent issues. We cannot turn a blind eye to this information and say, oh, we will not listen to this. Then we will not move and we will become cultic. We don't want to become cultic. We need to listen to all beneficial information coming from everyone. And this is how we will move forward. If someone has something beneficial or something that we think will help us to get Ruto out of power, we welcome this this information or this move. So thank you so much, Amerix. This is my submission. Over to you.
All right, thank you very much. I think Jimmy was dropping, and there was some question from Kenya. Kenya, you wanted to ask a question. Just ask so that others can also speak. We have like 40 minutes to go.
Okay. Sorry, Eric. What I wanted is there is something that what radicalized me. You get. This is a conversation I've had one-on-one with Jimmy, but I just wanted him. When Jimmy is talking, he talks about so many things, and we can be lost in the details, and we can miss on the key points, especially on what went wrong. I wanted Jimmy to reiterate on the part of how Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto, with the likes of Aden Duale and Kinabadi in 2013, how they were able to surgically open the constitution that we got in 2010, how they were able to surgically open it, which specific part of the constitution. And the reason I wanted him to just deliver this, it will just be a masterpiece for the young people. You get, for the young people that have had a chance to listen to him one-on-one, and also for the young people who would not understand how we got ourselves in this debt. So I wanted to amply request Jimmy Wajigi, if he's still available, to just to talk about the specific parts of the Constitution that were surgically opened and deliberately opened to be able to provide. I mean, when he was saying all this, is that most of the people, Americs, they might not understand. You have the privilege to understand that what might have really happened, because of doing a research here and there. But I want my fellow young people to understand when Jimmy is saying this is what Buddy was able to do. This is what this other guy was able to do. In order for all this stealing that has been happening, you get, I just want Jimmy to open other young people just on that part. I don't even want all the other stories that might have happened. I don't even so that we are able to find ourselves in whereby whatever Morara was exposing and all these projects zote. So I amply request if Jim Wajigi will be available just to explain on the parts of the Constitution that were surgically opened specifically to facilitate for the stealing. Hii yenye kina Uhuru Kenyatta wenye walikuwa wanaiba and all this borrowing. That is all I wanted to request from Jim Wajigi.
Okay.
Eric, I hope
Okay.
we have that time.
If he's there, maybe he can give 2, 3, 4. Yeah.
Yes. Mkenya, asante sana. That I gladly will answer, Eric. Now, Article 206 of the 2010 Constitution reads like this. There is established the consolidated fund into which shall be paid all money raised or received on or on behalf of the national government, except money that A, is reasonably excluded from the fund by an act of parliament. This is the one I was saying, like the housing fund or the petroleum development fund, and payable into another public fund. That is the fund I'm talking about. Or B, may under an act of parliament be retained by a state organ, received it for the purpose of defraying the expenses of the state organ. This is called appropriations in aid. This is where state corporations make a profit and they may keep it. Now, that provision of Article 206 of the Constitution was embedded in the Public Finance Management Act. Remember, the Act is now operationalizing the Constitution. And as that was now put, right, in Article, in the PFM, Article, just wait a minute. Now, it was put in the regional PFM Act this way. The cabinet secretary will ensure that the proceeds of the loan raised, no, this is not the one. It is Article 6, right. B. We're just getting the exact article. But as you can see in Article 206 of the Constitution, it reads A and B. Those are the exceptions under which money does not go to the consolidated fund. Now, that was specifically put in PFM as it is. Then, I just wanted to get the exact article that it was put in. I'll raise it to you shortly. Here we go. So I've read 206. Now, let me just read what happened. The original Public Finance Management Act said the following: the Cabinet Secretary shall ensure that the proceeds of any loan raised under the Act and any monies are paid into the consolidated fund and into any and no other public fund as established by the national government or entities that the Cabinet Secretary shall put. Now, what they did is specifically put it this way, that they took Article 206 and they embedded it and also added that loans are part of the consolidated fund, that it should be in the consolidated fund. Now, the amendment was brought by Duale in March 2014, and the amendment went like this, that they added what are called C and D to the Constitution 206A and B. And they added the following clauses in that amendment in 2014. C, disbursed directly. Now, yeah, this is the amendment. The Cabinet Secretary shall ensure that the proceeds of any loan raised under the Act are paid into the Constitution Fund or any other public fund established by the national government or any of its entities. The Cabinet shall determine in accordance with regulations approved by Parliament. That C, disbursed directly to the suppliers where the loan is a government-to-government loan and is raised for the purposes of financing goods and services provided by the supplier outside Kenya. D, in the case of an external loan or external government security, applied in part to pay in closing pre-negotiated expenses associated solely and exhaustively with the borrowing, including that not limited to fees, commissions, expenses, lenders, financial arrangers, managers, book runners, fiscal agents, trustees, paying agents, exchange and information agents, syndicated agents, counsel, clearing agents, listing agents, stock exchanges, rating agencies, and other expenses that are similar in nature arising from the external loan or external government security. So what happened is that Article 206 of the Constitution, which had A and B, suddenly became in Public Finance Management Act 4 articles instead of 2 as the Constitution. This was an amendment where they put C and D, and as you can read, it is money that can be disbursed directly to suppliers, and it all has to do with loans. It's money that can go to agents to do with loans, even rating agencies to do with loans. This is where they abrogated and in fact criminalized the Public Finance Management Act, because you cannot change the Constitution without a constitutional amendment. They chose to do so through statute. A simple majority in the House passed that amendment. That is unconstitutional. But they did so with the sole intent to make sure that money does not enter the consolidated account. And this money is specifically loans that they were going to create, that has become the balloon that we're living through today. Is that clear, Nelson?
Yes, sir, it's clear.
It's clear?
Yeah.
Yes. So they amended the Constitution.
So what does that mean?
What happened?
What does that mean?
What happened? Yes.
Mhm. Does that mean that there are people who can walk into the consolidated fund and pay suppliers directly without being sanctioned by the control of budget or the parliament?
No, what happens is this. You see, Article 206 of our Constitution says there shall be one account called the consolidated account, and all revenue of government must enter it. A and B give the exceptions. Exception 1, that if you have a housing fund, you have a petroleum development fund, which we contribute to when we buy petrol. That is a fund that can be an individual account, right, at the central bank. And then B, if a corporation, for example, KPLC makes money, they can keep what is called appropriations in aid, right? If a ministry for some reason does something that makes some money, right? They can keep it to defray further expenses in their budget. That's appropriations and aid, right? Those are the two exceptions that you do not take any other money to consolidated fund. So consolidated fund receives in full and in part, in full, right? Loans, etc., etc., etc. That was mimicked in Section 57 of the Public Finance Management Act. All right? So it was taken and copy-pasted in Section 57 of the Public Finance Management Act of 2012. It was put as it is in Article 206, exactly that. The only exceptions are A, a fund created by Parliament, and B, appropriations in aid, if there is a profit. Now, in 2014 March, Duale, as majority leader, with John Bundy seconding an amendment to Article 57 of the Public Finance Management Act, added two clauses. After A, which says pay to consolidated fund, which was the way it was in Article 50, and B, to a public fund created by Parliament, they added C and D. C and D, right, has everything to do with loans. Disbursed directly to suppliers where the loan is a government-to-government loan and is raised for the purpose of financing goods and services provided by a supplier outside Kenya. D, in the case of an external loan or an external government security, applied in part to pay at closing, and I really want you to hear these details, pre-negotiated expenses associated solely and exhaustively with the borrowing, including but not limited to fees, commissions, expenses of lenders, financial arrangers, managers, book runners, fiscal agents, trustees, paying agents, exchange and information agents, syndicated agents, counsel, clearing systems, listing agents, stock exchanges, rating agencies, and other expenses of a similar nature arising from an external loan or external government security. So what they did was create a method under which money does not have to come to Kenya. It flies out everywhere else. So who has access to this? Yes, that's what happened. So the Auditor General can't audit that money. It's not in her mandate. It's not in the consolidated fund. The controller of budget, who approves every expenditure out of that budget, out of consolidated fund, is not there to approve anything because she doesn't cite it. She doesn't cite it. So they created a balloon. So for example, the Eurobond, this was just done before Eurobond to show you the heist. The Eurobond was 2 billion from JP Morgan Chase, right? 1 billion we traced. Government, on our insistence, at the time, Rotich gave us details when we queried. And that money, we saw a swift transfer, right? But what happened? In JP Morgan Chase, the Auditor General, the Accountant General, called Bernard Dungu, and his deputy opened an account, right, called the Sovereign Wealth Fund Kenya in JP Morgan Chase. So all the monies that were created, that were gotten from so-called emerging markets for the bond, went to that account. The signatories were the two of them, all right? And they were dispersing from there. Instead of them dispersing instructions to central bank consolidated account, they were dispersing from New York. So they sent money to a syndicated loan of Barclays Bank that Kibaki had taken, $650 million. They dispersed $350 million to the central bank exchequer account that we're talking about, consolidated fund. Then another 1 billion, they could not show us where it went. They redacted the SWIFT, so we don't know. It was a heist. It never came to Kenya. In fact, we traced it to Qatar, where they opened another sovereign wealth account, Kenya. They opened accounts all over the world. And that's what's been going on here. So they decide with a phone call what you're to do with money that has been received as loans. I want it in my pocket, I want it in my stomach, I want it to say, where? That's what has happened. And there's no accountability. The only time the controller of budget sees this, or the Auditor General sees this, is at the point where we are paying those debts. And that's what we started querying with them. Why are you approving debts, payments, that you cannot see where they came in, what they went to. But you're approving from our taxes, from the consolidated account, payment of these debts. What is it for? And you have seen ever since we started raising this, they're coming out and saying, oh, we didn't know, oh, there's this discrepancy, oh, there's that discrepancy. Just the other day, the Auditor General came out and said they have discovered 55 billion shillings has gone out in paying arrangement fees for loans that have never been taken. 55 billion shillings in the 10 years that we're talking about. I have a figure of 180 billion shillings out to arrangement fees. Arrangement fees are like this. You can see there the provision was given. The arrangement fees are simply this. The arrangement fees are simply this. Money that if you are sourcing a loan, right, you must give us a 1%, 2% of the value of the loan, right? And that's what happened. That is exactly what happened. Now, I am prepared, Amarix, to come back on two issues. This, so we show you systematically the heist year on year, because we have got it documented year on year, graphically. And number two, how we can take action, right, to stop feeding this monster, the tax revolt.
Oh, thank you very much. I am so.
Amerix, Eric.
Yes. Please wind up so that others can speak.
Yeah, sure. There is something that I wanted Wajigi just to expound on, and this is he can do it on this space or even the next space that we can have, is how there is no accountability for account C and D. Well, I might have an understanding of this, but what do the young Kenyans? Because right now, I can comfortably tell you, we are on our own, Americs. You can attribute to that. It's the effort of you and every other person who is conscious in Kenya, who understands that we are in trenches, that is pulling for this. The aspect of why there is no accountability for C and D, and the aspect of why all this stealing is happening. I wish Wajigi could just put it in the layman's language. I know it gets too much into
I'll be very simple. Our constitution said we have one account in this country, not 10, not 2, one account. All monies go there, and it gave the exception. If you create a housing fund out of parliament, it can go there and you monitor it. So it gave exceptions, only exceptions, A and B. And why they did that is so that you can manage from one account various things. For example, that is what anchors the budget. So every time you are going to remove money from the taxes that are collected in that account, the controller of budget has to approve it depending on a vote head of parliament. That means Parliament has approved an expenditure for salaries for Ministry of Transport. There is a vote head. It's given a number, so you remove it. Parliament has approved in the budget the expenditure for a road, right? Recarpeting of a particular road or a borehole somewhere. It has a vote head. So there's a proper accountability. Even loans, when they enter that account, it is for this purpose. So the controller of budget approves its expenditure, and the Auditor General comes and audits whether that has been done according to the law. These guys decided that that constitution does not work for them because of all those controls. And they decided they are going to operate outside of it because the intention was to take money that is not going to the budget, to take money that is not for you and I and Wanjiku and Mura. It is for themselves. So they created a balloon where our taxes, right, are paying for loans that never came to us, that they ate, that they swallowed, and it's to the tune of $50 billion. This is what they are protecting up until today. This is the mess that is taking 70% of all the taxes that we are paying to the government. This is why we have a problem. And unless we're able to cut off that illegal debt, which is illegal to us, unless we're able to cut off that illegal debt, I can assure you it is misery for the next 60 years. We have to cut it off now. We cut it off now, we are free. And just to give you an example, this year, we are paying 1.9 trillion to that debt, which was a heist. a major heist by world standards. Now, that 1.9 trillion, you imagine that to fund primary school in entirety, to fund high school in entirety, giving a student 20,000 shillings, nobody has to pay from their pocket, and to give a university student 100,000 as the numbers are today, right? 100,000, okay? Taking an average that a university student is 300,000, all right, that they need to pay per year. One, they can take a loan, one their parent pays, the other is given as a grant. I cannot tell you that that cost is only 145 billion shillings a year. And nobody will be lining up for any bursary, right? This is what is being denied of us. 145, we are paying 1.9 to theft. There's no other malfeasance. It's not a bloated government or bloated counties or this or that, right? Or theft of a little furniture here and there or somebody doing this. That is nothing. 1.9, when you see debt payments, it is all a heist. Of that 1.9, 1.1 trillion is interest. There's no bigger expenditure from our taxes. Next year, it's going to be 2.1 trillion. Unless we cut that snake, we are in trouble here. And the only way we can force them is by not contributing to it, is by saying we are not going to pay any more tax and we are going to revolt. And they come to a grinding halt because then they are forced to look at that thing and we will force them to do it. And I can tell you, once we do that, this is over. All of them are done. They all exit our lives and we'll have a life of greatness that we can look forward to. But we have to cut off this snake. And it has very many players. It has international players, big players that have been doing this all over the world, big players that are doing it in other African countries. Zambia has been part of this. Mozambique, part of this. Malaysia, part of it. It's big players supported by big governments. But we have to cut off the snake ourselves. We have slave masters here as leaders. They have made sure that we have become slaves to all these entities that are reaping our sweat. This is where we say no more. And this is what it's about. No other issue. We sort this out, we free Kenyans.
Thank you very much. Let me allow you to rest.
Thank you.
In our next space, you'll come with specifics.
Yes. Yes.
Francis.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you.
Francis. Thank you very much, Jimmy. Francis. You've been in my DM saying there's something you want to say.
Yeah, give me a second. I put my earpiece. Sorry, I was charging my phone. Great. I hope I'm audible. Thank you. Those are good submissions from Jimmy, and all of us. We are ending up in one consensus that the streets is the only solution. Can you imagine? These pieces of shit have their own personal bank account where they are collecting our taxes. They are collecting loans in the name of the country, and then they are appropriating it. And so we are wondering, why don't we have money in the economy? Why don't we have any cash flow? Why are all these banks going crazy? Because Kenya has moved, the ownership of Kenya has moved from the Imperial British company to now Uhuru and Ruto and JP Morgan, and which is funny because JP Morgan CEO was in the country like 1 month ago. I saw him taking selfies with Ruto, and I saw him trying to solicit for a job in the Trump administration, and Trump politely declined to appoint him as a finance secretary. So it means that even internationally, the people and the anchors who had helped Ruto, the people who had maintained and preserved his presidency, the people who encouraged him to kill young children. Meg Whitman is out. People are saying that, government propagandists, I would see them saying, it's not bloggers who got Meg Whitman out. Which other US ambassador has resigned other than Meg Whitman and the one for South Africa? None other. So today I saw the charge d'affaires. He has not even settled in office. The first person he's going to see is Uhuru, the same person we are talking about who has embezzled 7 trillion of our money in the name of debt. Over $50 billion as has been elaborated right now. So we are ending up, and I've put flyers, please. Check those flyers on my Twitter handle. We are talking about Jamhuri Day. We are hitting the streets wherever you are, even those who are in Outer Ring, Feather, Pipeline. The people in Pipeline, I really don't understand what ails you, people who live in Pipeline. You live in some of the most shittiest conditions, the shittiest conditions in Nairobi. The people of Pipeline live there. But you seem so happy. You seem so content with having mud and sewage just flowing outside your house. I need to understand how you reason. Because there was this time when the bodies were retrieved from Kware. And so people from Pipeline accompanied the body to City Mortuary. All you just needed to do was not go back now to your shithole regions, was now to go to State House and get rid of Ruto. That's all you needed to do, and your lives would have changed forever. So when we call for protests, we don't understand why these people do not come out. Are you so comfortable in your oppression? Do you love bad governance that much? Do you love the fact that you're hanging your clothes for everyone who is driving on the Outer Ring Road to see? Are those the conditions? Are those the ideal conditions that you want to live by? So, and there are these other people called farmers. Every day we are seeing farmers in the UK, in France, when they are protesting, they go and pour shit in the government buildings, in parliament, So we are wondering why Kenyan farmers, every day your right to grow, your right to sustenance is being encroached on, is being infringed on by law after law, which are being drafted by people outside our country. So why are you so comfortable in that state? Why are you so comfortable in oppression? Why don't you ever join us when we are saying we are protesting? Because everyone who is protesting, even the first wave of the Gen Z protests, those were, you saw Kimani Ichung'wah was trying to play a divisive card, and we've discussed this with Americ severally, how they use the class war, where now Kimani Ichung'wah was saying, oh, the kids are coming in their iPhones, they are going to KFC and what. It was all to deter the other people from joining in. So if kids living in Runda, living in Muthaiga could go and protest, why the fuck would you, who is living in squalor, in Pipeline, why don't you join? I really don't understand. Even the people who are paid, the Mungikis who are paid to come and loot the supermarkets, to come and kill the others, to come and disrupt the momentum. And you still go back to Mukuru kwa Jenga. You still go back to Mukuru kwa Ruben. What ails you? Can't you see this is a moment where we all have to unite? Like yesterday, I was seeing when Kasmuel Makaure tried to join the femicide. It was a femicide protest. Obviously, the female protesters would want all support from all genders, from everyone. But for this particular one, for this particular charlatan called Kasmuel Makaure, they said no. If we are going to achieve our female rights, we'd rather achieve them without Kasmuel Makaure. So that unity of purpose. If people from these high-end estates can be on the streets, and you, in your infinite stupidity, the thing you're only thinking of is how I'm going to go and steal this supermarket, how I'm going to go and do this, how I'm going to go and pickpocket someone. What ails you? Are you so comfortable in your oppression? Do you love poverty? The reason why we do what we do is because we have traveled outside the country. We have been to places where systems work, where taxes are literally put to good use. Now you're telling me that a charlatan like Sakaja Johnson has not put in a penny to development. You're telling me that Aden Duale and John Buddy, you can see John Buddy's appointment as a financier was done in 2013, 2014, when they were conceiving this whole idea of hijacking money from our consolidated fund into a private, to a private entity. So why we are living in peace? We are coexisting with Aden Duale. Aden Duale, we should be banning his house. We should be getting details of his phone number, his cars, everything, because